A couple of days ago, I was doing work for a client, and it seems that I didn't perfectly communicate how the process would go, and as a result, there were some differing expectations between the two of us in how the project will. I was able to smooth out the issue in the end, but it did remind me about how important it is to communicate the process and expectations you have beforehand. But it also made me think about something else. It made me think about money shots. Yes, those money shots. You know, the famous ones in movies, like the Titanic. We've seen that one where I think it was the main character Jack and the main character Rose are standing on the bow of the Titanic, and they've got this dramatic embrace, and you see a large view of the Titanic. It's a very famous moment, and it kind of encapsulates the film for a lot of people. It encapsulates their impression of their film, the experience, their impression of the film. And, this is a very common thing. There are many movies with many famous money shots. And, I thought that in some ways, this can impact data science too. So this is what I'd like to discuss today on data troll. So, regarding money shots, so we have the money shots in the films, as I discussed, like the Titanic, other famous ones you can think of, maybe something like Jurassic Park, where they have these grand shots of the dinosaurs. And again, it kind of encapsulates people's experience, impressions of the film. And you can think about it, this is a pretty, understandable phenomenon, We like to try and kind of compress our memories because we have a lot of things to remember, and we like to try and summarize them with a big, grand moment. And you can see that with not just film, but like you can see that, for instance, in sports, where they usually show the highlights of a very big, famous play, like a big score or a big defensive play, something like that, or somebody raising the trophy. They have that in food, where you have that final, you have that big reveal of the plate, where they'll show the chef cutting up, cooking, and then boom, they show the final plate as they bring in, and it's very exciting. Or you can see that, for instance, personally, I like to watch Building Computers, and you can see that with Building Computers, where they basically, put the computer together and then have these very, cool shots with this very driving music showing all the bits functioning and moving inside the computer. So it's not surprising that it exists in data science too. So what does this have to do with my experience with a client? Well, because these money shots kind of encapsulate, or kind of people overly represent kind of the whole process, I think they can skew expectations on people who are maybe not familiar with how data science is done. So let's kind of go in a bit deeper to what the money shot in data science would be. So in my opinion, basically, it would be something like the final model prediction. So that would be a cool money shot, saying, hey, look at how effectively this model can predict these things. Or a dashboard, basically saying, hey, filled with visualizations, updating, saying, hey, here are all these trends. Or these cool kind of summaries of statistics. These would be kind of the money shots, and they're most identifiable thing, accessible thing for people who are maybe not familiar with the whole process. So what's the problem with that? Well, the problem is it kind of takes attention away from a lot of the other process, which is equally important and actually takes up a lot more time. So if you look at the data science project, I think one potentially useful way to kind of summarize all the different steps would be to say we have about 5 stages. So the first stage, or well, maybe 4 stages. Sorry, we have 4 stages. The first stage would be acquiring the data. So maybe you pull the data from an SQL, you get it from a CSV file, and then you put it into your software, your environment, whatever it be, R, Python, or whatever. The second step is really twofold. So you're going to have one kind of process where you're cleaning, wrangling, and feature engineering the data. At the same time, you're probably going to be doing an exploratory data analysis in that second stage at the same time. So to explain what those two different parts are, the first one is where you're basically looking for any errors in the data when you're data cleaning. So are there any values that you know are wrong? Or for instance, is there anything that's inconsistent that would cause problems, running code and algorithms in the future? So for instance, maybe you have a bunch of dates in there, but unfortunately not all the dates are in the same format. That would involve data cleaning, fixing those out. Or maybe you have a bunch of text in there and you got to basically pull out only the emails. Again, that would be data cleaning. Wrangling would be putting together all the pieces of data in the right format that you want. So maybe you have inputted 2 Excel files and you want to put those 2 Excel files, those 2 Excel files together. Third, you have feature engineering. So maybe you'd be taking the timestamp, and you'd be just extracting the time of day, the hour, just the hour of the day from each entry. Or for instance, maybe you'd be taking the postal code and then extrapolating the city name from that. So this process here, what I just described, often takes the vast majority of time. With that, and as I said, the exploratory data analysis, where you're kind of looking using statistical summaries and visualizations to kind of see what the data set looks like and to better understand the nature of the data set and potential issues and potential relationships. This whole process can take up to probably 80% of the time, right? The second stage. From there, you would go on to doing the model and fine-tuning, and then finally you deploy it or share your findings in the final 4th stage. This could be, creating a dashboard or creating a report or just showing the predictions that your machine's making and deploying it so that it can constantly continue to make automated predictions. So in that process, the final one is where people are going to pay all the attention. What does the report say? Let's look at the predictions from the algorithm. But what takes most of the time is probably giving the second stage, the data cleaning, wrangling, and feature engineering. Some people say it takes up to 80% of the time. In my experience, I can believe it. I've taken a lot of time to do that. And so when you take that time, unfortunately, the client may not be expecting you to spend that much time. And in this case, what happened was, the client was just focused on the money shot, on what are the calculations. And he was expecting me to basically be working on the calculations and asking questions about that right away. But in fact, I needed to input the data, review the data, look if there were any issues, wrangle it. And that took me a lot of time relative to the calculations. And because I didn't communicate that would take time, he thought that potentially I was, not doing the work or I wasn't doing it properly, and I had explained that situation. So that's why I'd say that, in data science, we like to think about, focus on that money shot, the modeling, making that model right, getting those cool visualizations. But it's important to let the stakeholders know that there's more to the process before you get to that point, and that it's going to take time. So, yeah, that's my advice. Always remember how your client might not be aware of the whole process, and their thoughts on the process might be dominated by the money shot. So always remember to share your expectations. Anyways, if you like this video, please hit the like and subscribe. And yeah, thanks for joining Data Troll. Have a good day.